Bob, I'm really excited to talk to you. My name is Brandon Helm. We spoke last week. I got the COVID vaccine. I will be ready for an interview. I'm hoping we can schedule that the 29th, 30th, or 31st. But I'm really excited in this position. For this position, I can talk about a complex new way of looking at markets and a huge expansion of. You want to talk about lifelong learning? You mentioned in your platform, and it's a lifelong goal. And there's a way, job training and apprenticeships, there's a way to build an interactive pivot engine, which is companies can extend into continuous improvement and training programs. You make tools for everybody, educators. This is going to be a huge part of the market for educators to make interactive documentaries like Mastery.com makes. Only you import PowerPoint slides and Prezis. There will be other tools for this. It's the huge, unique new concept is an open market concept where you basically have a continual bid to serve different market goals. And so there's going to be an overall cyberforce, which with an identity access architecture and a compartmentalized way of looking at encryption. And I have some ideas there. I have some background there. But the bigger point is we want a way of democratically managing, and you and all citizens as well as politicians want a complex way that they can follow along, click on a post, picture clicking on a post, and it bringing into context all this interactive learning content. Maybe you have some learning content that's courses, some that's from the YouTube market and different YouTube channels, some that's built on interactive documentaries built off of articles, and that's kind of what I have here with Wired Magazine and Khan Academy producing an interactive documentary on this article. And so it's a way of building linked content where you can have dissections on content, you can have people propose different branches and overall pivots or expansions of pivots, and so this would let you view alternate approaches and do all kinds of things. But you let the social medias compete to implement this market, and you let the education companies compete to implement this market. You let the security companies compete to implement this market, and then you have a way of managing your central layer where, and through this would be in the art of articles of incorporation. Then it becomes debatable whether you launch this as just a private sector or just a government managed thing, but it's a blend. You contractually manage it between the private sector and the government in this unique way of looking at markets, but the private sector largely controls it, and you can have politically driven unanimous votes on how you modify this architecture. That maybe some of that comes from Cyberforce recommendation, and so, but that's all tied together. You build this overall model for enabling a cyberforce and a strategy where instead of having amendments, you have addendums for how specific markets come together. Some of those will be financial transaction grids, and different companies will be competing to maintain that overall grid. There's a way that they can expand into an active plate architecture for inventory management and advanced accounting automation. Some really interactive tax programs could automatically credit people for buying components to upgrade their vehicles to automated driving variants of those vehicles or systems for those vehicles. Maybe you want to create a program where people can sell or salvage their car, and then they buy a new car and it's compatible with this AI grid. There are all kinds of different complex things you could enable as a society. But it's going to require specific tax advancements and grid solutions to manage as well as it can. And that'll be how we go after the national debt. But we're trying to build this complex set of platforms and AI solutions and keep these markets open and not locked down. And simultaneously, we need a way of making sure this is secure. And so if you have key market verticals, major market verticals or addendums as you build this overall platform for major market verticals, and this gets very complex, but then you have an open market competition to continually serve those, and you have numerous companies looking at those core layers alongside a cyberforce, but then they perfect their products that are built on top of that. And that is how the technology works. There is a super advantageous overall strategy, and it just becomes, how do we manage that? What's the right amount of private sector and public sector and government level collaboration? And simultaneously, this is a very complex conversation. It would be perfect to have this exact tool, which you want to look at managing a market in a creative, democratic, open way somehow. And I think I have that solution there. And you create this document that's either an extension of the Constitution or it's got a unique name somehow incorporated and referenced by the Constitution, and you tie these two documents together and it becomes a part of your extension of your government, managing these complex infrastructures in this complex way. And one of these is your interactive transcript system, which is your lifelong learning tool. It's how you can pivot the workforce into the opportunities of the future. It's how citizens will be able to follow along with the most significant changes to different fields and overall economies. For example, I think there's a way, this would be relevant in education for certainly, but there's another way in medical records and specifically psychology. You can build a super cool solution set there. And I could talk in detail about that. But again, that's pivoting an industry largely and building complex tools that you want to have an entire industry have access to perfecting together. And this is where the conversations are at. This is what AI driving grids are like. They're going to have layers where they have to work together like this. And so if you find an overall strategy where companies, based upon results, and you define it by major market vertical. So in AI driving, it might be based upon safety rates or a black box system, and you create an economic model, and part of your insurance system ties to this, and it looks at the technology in the black box systems, and this is part of how you enable the complex insurance market and things like that. And so those are all factors in how you define that addendum for that major market vertical. AI security can have some ways that you involve the public in how AI security works, and in a very deep way, and they will trust those products more. And this is where we're at. We want people to be able to follow along with these conversations. You could qualify people's resumes, and they could click on something and see what's between here and there in the conversation where they're at and what's being discussed. You get all kinds of additional learning content that can show up down here. Different categories of sorting that. You define a way of democratically looking at how you manage these markets and how you define these markets. Would you say that strategic pivot and this unique pitch level exploration engine for social media should be its own market, or should it be part of the education market and part of that transcript system? I think it's better for it to be its own unique niche product driven by the social media results, and they'll get their sales channels there. And they will get some relevant content that they flow to learning systems, and they will get some profits from that. And just like education will get some profits through the channels in social media that social media promotes relevant to traditional or more well-defined learning networks that have their own interactive models, that the pitches and more advanced ways of interacting with discussions are built off of. And that'll largely be the pivot architecture and pitch engine. So some of that will relate to strategy and how you manage markets, because that's a democratic level of the conversation as well. For example, with this Cyberforce architecture, there's a way that there's a physical and there's an overall, you stack these encryption keys such that it's more than one company, and then there's an overall encryption algorithm, and that's where McAfee, Norton, or private security consultation firms would be able to incorporate their variation of these algorithms and control that, and they would have channels in an overall Cyberforce platform that manages this really complex compartmentalized security grid, which will be key in AI discussions. And these are very complex things. We need these tools, and so I would love to talk with Working America about how even going into healthcare and the way that you build solutions for healthcare. I know that's one of the things that you're talking about for your platform, and this relates to corporate accountability, because it's this overall and workplace rights and good jobs and a fair economy. I think you guys are going to love this. But with healthcare, there are structures to how you might want a major market vertical for all these different healthcare networks coming together, and that will be your foundational layer for what all different user interfaces are built off of. And you want to divide up these results regionally anyway, but this saves costs and creates a more dynamic market for the ways companies can collaborate and build off of core infrastructure. And if it's tied to this overall platform evolution, you're going to have identity products that streamline insurance networks for kids to find services for psychology and reach out, and that'll streamline things with students reaching out and making it easier in counseling situations in school. It'll increase success rates because of the complex networks of products that can be built, and relationships between these platforms, and the security. You can market more security through this approach. Um, and this is where the discussions are going, and having a free market approach and an opportunity like the U.S. Constitution, where we protect these free markets and we define an overall way to work on this platform and serve, for example, architectural needs so that we have the best security. And different companies can be featured for that, but we're going to end up trying to pivot architecture to go towards that direction across industries anyway. And so you want to build a model that enables that. And you can look at profit sharing between companies for a period of time. Maybe it's right to do that only for 5 years, which is smarter if you profit share across an industry for a major transition for 5 years, rather than try to slowly grow a brand for 20 years and then you could be pivoting some of this other manufacturing opportunity. Sometimes you can't do that because the manufacturing is too specialized, but often there is an opportunity to pivot some of the manufacturing processes or add new facilities in different locations. And for manufacturing processes, sometimes this is better anyway, because then you're able to complete a board in a location, and that makes it more secure if you can build that whole board in one location versus that might not be that, but that's not a good example. But you definitely want to be able to implement a network overall and talk about different ways of profit sharing and creating regulation that moves to a more secure overall network. Otherwise, companies are bound to try to market that their model is more secure, and we need to have this. There's a way that they can have their algorithms and have these stack and still market that they've got the better algorithm. And you keep that proprietary anyway. But if you don't build this overall compatibility strategy, you can't have your cross-observational or maximally compartmentalized overall security approach with your essentially Earth's defense grid, where you have different keys that can be unlocked or deactivated, and different teams that can deactivate a grid because of things they see for different reasons. So Bob, I hope we get a chance to talk further. I would love to network on how we can make this super cool interactive transcript system and this new way of looking at markets that might be key to paying off the national debt and allowing America to really lead in how it pivoted industry and how I know we're still leading in a lot of ways, but I think this is such a huge opportunity. You just think about locking down a transcript system versus having a space race like Chase to implement these technologies. And in AI driving, companies could be recruiting and driving the skills development in the workforce while looking for great ideas and helping the government to understand how best to regulate these things, as is the case in where Elon Musk is trying to take the AI discussion. And so finally, in closing, I just want to end up with this vision where a huge key part of this is making it easy to produce, and this is what the education industry would largely get sales from, but producing videos like Mastery.com produces, where you make it easy for educators to import slides and animations from either Doodly.com might be a technology that you can make some of the videos. Otherwise, it's going to be YouTube videos, and then importing PowerPoint slides and Prezi slides or other tools where you make these interactive documentaries and this can make very complex subjects easier to get your takeaways. And you can build different modes into documentaries. This will be a part of the market where you watch a documentary passively anyway, and then you can turn on challenge modes and build out your resume in this interactive transcript network. And so this is going to make complex issues approachable in bite-sized ways in different layers, because you can turn on an easy mode, get the bullet points, turn on an intermediate mode and interact with some of the challenging questions in a little bit deeper way, and then turn on a mode where you'd have to have the complete level of expert background knowledge and maybe in some cases very complex mathematical questions. And talking about bridging to lifelong learning and training programs for employees and workforce, these tools will allow companies to make interactive continuous improvement programs, interactive training programs, interactive challenge questions for interviews, different layers of what you can post or create a pivot page for, and create a set of ways for interacting with, an onboarding interview page versus an internal page you have to get access to on continuous improvement and collaboration on internal projects. And some of that you'll have built into companies' private enterprise products but it'll have this overall security feature, and it'll have these network architectures that are shareable. And so there are very complex ways where we can build this really interesting set of opportunities. This has gotten to be a long video. I hope you watch some of this, all of this. I hope we get the opportunity to work in the future. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate you.